Hi guys, and welcome to this new tutorial on ethical hacking. Today's session will be theory only, and I will cover the things you need to know before doing a VAPT or vulnerable assessment and penetration testing. This will be more about what should be your approach and where to look for vulnerabilities in a website. For this purpose, OWASP or OWASP it delivers free and open application security tools and standards, as well as plenty of valuable materials on severity testing, secure code development, and review. OWASP stands for Open Web Application Security Project. OWASP regularly prepares the OWASP Top 10 list. This list presents top 10 vulnerabilities that are most commonly found in web application, what makes them easy to exploit, and the attacker takes an advantage of this. The attacks result not only in security breaches of your web application, stealing data or taking over your infrastructure, but more importantly in harming the reputation of your company. So let's look into the OWASP top 10 list, and I will talk about each one in detail. So first of all, go to your browser and type OWASP top 10 PDF, and then you will get this top 10 list of 2017. Then open the list and you can download it to study it in more detail. So as you can see, the OWASP top 10 list is released in 2017. We are in 2019 right now. And the list which was released by OWASP previous to the list or previous to this list was released in 2013. So this version was released about like they took 4 years to release this new list. So let's just check the top 10 vulnerabilities. So these are the top 10 vulnerabilities which were released in 2013, and these are the top 10 vulnerabilities released in 2017. As you can see, these two, that is injection attacks and broken authentication, is still at the still has first and the second place in the list, whereas cross-site scripting is now lowered down to the 7th position, and sensitive data exposure has got the 3rd position in the new list. And you can see that some of the older vulnerabilities have been removed, that is they are no longer that they no longer poses that much amount of threat like they used to do earlier. So they have removed these cross-site forgery and unvalidated redirects and forwards. So let's look into these one by one. The first is injection attacks. So what exactly are injection attacks? The database of any website stores a lot of information. For example, a bank website will store information like username, date of birth, account number, addresses, the amount of money a person has in his account, and so on. But to access this information, that person will first have to enter the login name and password in the input field. And whenever any person enters the correct password and username, the website creates a query in its backend and sends it to the database, after which the database responds back the respective fields that belong to that particular user. These queries are generally in SQL. The backend queries are generally in SQL, and hackers who have experience in SQL can create such queries on their own and send it to the database from injection points to get information. And they can change your database, they can do changes in your database, they can delete or they can add. So what are these injection points? The fields where you type your password or email ID, or the fields where you have to input anything from your side, are the injection points. So how can you prevent these type of attacks? The injection points should be the input fields should be properly designed and should accept characters only. SQL requires, since the SQL queries require special characters, so the input fields should not allow special characters. Special characters like the inverted commas, exclamation mark, equal to sign, and so on. So wherever required, the input fields should only accept the normal characters in capital letter or small letter and numbers, of course, but not the special characters. So this is the one way of preventing the injection type of attacks. So let's go to this second vulnerability, that is broken authentication. Now, broken authentication is a vulnerability that is present in many web applications because of the laziness of the employees or the laziness of the people who use the application. When an application or a website is made live for all the people, and if that website or web application has the by default passwords, and the by default passwords as in the password of the admin, the username is admin and the password is password. So these are the example of by default password, and if the organization do not change this passwords, then the hackers can take advantage of this. Like the hackers have list of by default passwords that a company can use, and they can just do a brute force attack on your website or web application and get access to your website. So how to prevent this? You should define a proper password policy for all the users, and that all the password policy should have a particular length of password, and the password should have complexity, as in some of the letters should be capital, there should be a special character in the letter, and so on, so that it becomes difficult for the hacker to do a brute force attack and to crack your website if a default password is present. The password should also be changed every 1 month. So that's a good practice. I mean, so as you can see, generally people have the habit of keeping the same passwords again and again, and not changing their password regularly. So this is a very big vulnerability, and it is present because of our own laziness. Moving on to the next one, sensitive data exposure. Every organization has sensitive data about the users and about any transactions they make, about their accounts, etc. Make sure that when this data is transmitted, it should be considered as highly confidential and should be encrypted whenever sending from one place to another. Also, this sensitive data should not be stored or sent to a different place unnecessarily. For this purpose of encryption, strong cipher or algorithms must be used. Moving on to the next one is XML, external entities. XML is extensive markup language, and in many HTML application, XML is used to store or transport data, while HTML is used to format and display the same data. In XML, an XML parser is a piece of software which reads the document and handles the complexity of the XML format for the programmer. The task of the XML parser is to parse the XML and generate an output. The base of the attack lies in the logic that if the attacker gets access to the parser, he can make the parser to parse the XML which is sent by him. This attack can lead to disclosure of confidential data, a denial of service, server-side request forgery, etc. Prevention of XML external entities can be done by disabling all the XML external entities, by disabling the processing of all the external XML entities in all the XML parsers in your application. Moving on to the fifth one is a broken access control. So just like the broken authentication, the broken access control also is a vulnerability because of our laziness. This means in any web application there must be levels of access. Admins levels of access, as in generally when a web application is developed to be secure, the organization make an admin access where the admin has the right to where the admin has the power to do power to access anything, to read, to write, to make any development, to create employees, to create new users and customers, etc. So this is the admin access, and he can see everything, and he can see, download, change anything. Then there should be an employee access. The employee access is for those employees who work in that organization. So these employees can read and write data, but they cannot do any kind of development in that particular application. Then there is a customer or end user access, and this particular access is only read-only access, and the end users cannot access many things in the website that the employee or the admin of that company can. So this three level of access which I just spoke of should be properly implemented. Otherwise, it can keep a vulnerability open, and the hackers can take an advantage of this. Imagine if a hacker gets the admin access of your web application. How catastrophic can it be? So once these three level of access is defined, make sure that you put someone who checks whether the admin has the admin access only, the employees have the employees access only, and the end users have proper end user read only access. The sixth one is security misconfiguration. Now every network devices and servers have many features, and there are many unwanted features in them also. So these features which we do not want should be disabled. There should be a quarterly network audit that finds out whether these unwanted features are disabled or not, and they should be done on a regular basis. We should also make sure that the devices which we use are not end of support or end of sale from the manufacturer. Just an example is, as you all know, there was a ransomware patch which was released by Windows. So the Windows system which had the ransomware patch installed was not vulnerable to ransomware attack, whereas a system which did not have a ransomware patch inside it was vulnerable to ransomware attack. So what if the attacker knows in some system that the ransomware patch is not installed, and then he takes an advantage of this? So this is one example in which these quarterly audits should be done, and things should be found, and these vulnerabilities in your network devices should be found. The seventh one is cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting is also called XSS, and XSS is also another type of code injection attack, but the difference here is that XSS uses the website as a means to attack the user rather than it itself damaging the website. If an XSS is permanently present on the website, all those who visit that page will have a JavaScript executed by their browser. Attackers can steal the cookies, allowing them to use the website pretending to be that user. It can change the way the website looks and can include links on your website that lead you to phishing pages, porn downloads, malicious softwares, etc. So to prevent this, just like as I said in injection attacks, the search inputs shall be sanitized and properly filtered. And the search input should only accept characters where characters are needed and numbers where numbers are needed. The eighth one is insecure deserialization. what exactly it is. Now, in order to understand what insecure deserialization is, let's first understand serialization and deserialization. Serialization refers to the process of converting an object into a format which can be persisted into a disk or saved to a data store or sent over a network. The format in which an object is serialized into can either be binary or structured text like XML, etc. Deserialization. On the other hand, this is the opposite of serialization, that is, transforming serialized data coming from a file stream or a network socket into an object. Web apps use serialization and deserialization on a regular basis, but the trouble starts when deserializing untrusted user input. Successful deserialization attack can allow an attacker to carry out denial of service attacks, authentication bypasses, and remote code execution. How can you prevent this? Implement the integrity checks on encryption of serialized objects to prevent hostile object creation or data tampering. Monitor incoming and outgoing network connectivity from servers that deserialize. Moving on to the ninth one, using components with known vulnerabilities. There are many devices that network devices and operating system that have known vulnerabilities. Like I earlier said about the ransomware patch, if the attacker knows that a system has a known vulnerability, it is not the ransomware patch is not upgraded in a system, then it is vulnerable to ransomware. So you should avoid using operating systems or any softwares in any networking devices with known vulnerabilities. Make sure whatever you use is up to date. Make sure your antivirus is up to date. Moving on to the 10th one and the last one, insufficient logging and monitoring. In every organization and for all websites, network devices, there should be a proper login monitoring. Logs should be captured for every person who logs into the website or a networking device, or logs should be captured for every small configuration that is changed on a networking devices. Now, why is this important? It's because whenever any trouble happens, whenever there is an attack or any kind of hack happens, then your logs is a place where you want to search and investigate first. And because whatever you do on your network is captured in your logs, so make sure whichever device you use, the login of that device is on, so that you get proper notifications and you have the entire history of what has happened on that network devices, from where a person has logged in, what IP has he used, etc., and so on. So this is it, guys. Like I explained, the OWASP top 10. If you are interested in checking the earlier list of OWASP top 10 2013, then you can do it. And from the next tutorial onwards, we will be searching for these vulnerabilities, some of these vulnerabilities which we discussed over here in our DVWA, which we installed in our previous video. So that's it for today. Thank you. And if this video was any helpful, then do subscribe and like it for more videos to come.